Okay, we are live. So, hey, family, we're just about ready to start tonight's episode of the Black Independent. So, stay with us because we've got two powerful guests joining us to unpack the laws that just went into effect across Florida, what that means for our communities, our rights, and our future. We'll be joined by State Representative Michelle Rayner and ACL. Let me change that. Attorney James Shaw. So he's had some changes along the way. So excuse me, but trust me, this one's going to be eye-opening. So go ahead and hit the like on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and share this live with someone who needs to stay informed. All right, countdown's coming up, and then let's roll that intro to get us started.
Black Independent, where we speak truth to power, unapologetically.
For too long, the black vote has been treated like a given, but we're not property. We're not pawns. We are the descendants of those who built this nation. And now, we're demanding tangibles, not tokenism, because the era of blind loyalty is over. This is the Black Independent. Let's get to work.
Welcome to the Black Independent, the place where truth meet power and power meet accountability. I'm Mona Judge, and with me is my co-host, Jeannette Bradley.
Hey, good evening to everybody. So tonight's conversation, as I mentioned earlier, is about the laws that are shaping our lives, laws that went into effect right here in Florida on October 1st. We'll unpack how they come to be, who benefits and who doesn't, and what you can do about that.
Well, this isn't just about another policy decision. These are the laws that affect your traffic stop, your rent, your child mental health care, your small business, and even your right to protest. How about that? That's why we're joined by two powerful voices, State Representative Michelle Rayner and who is a civil rights attorney, lawmaking, and James Shaw, who's also an attorney.
So together, they're going to help us understand how activism, your activism, can become legislation and how policy becomes real change or in some cases, real pain in our communities.
But before we dive in, hey guys, take a second and to hit the like on our Facebook page and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to hit 500 subscribers so you don't miss future episodes. We're building this community together, one conversation at a time.
All right, so let's bring everybody on board. There's Ms. Rayner to the stage.
And she's
she's driving.
All right, she's driving. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
it is mounted. Thank y'all. So I will be home in 5 minutes. I have been
You're fine.
Up driving since 4 a.m. So but
Ooh,
I really wanted to be on here. I really wanted to make sure I'm on here with y'all because this is going to be a great conversation. And my good friend James is here.
Yes, I appreciate you. I appreciate both of you coming, but I can't tell you how many people or politicians at the federal and local level that I've seen driving for interviews. So you are fine. That's the way of today right now. Wherever you are, be ready. So we'll start with you, Representative Rayner. Walk us through how a bill actually becomes law here in the state of Florida. So many people think everything happens in Washington, but the decisions in Tallahassee hit us first, and a lot of times it hit us hard.
Yeah, 100%. So first off, again, thank y'all so much for having me and thank you for inviting me. I think that especially in the moment that we're in, that this is a vitally important conversation so folks can understand how laws are made and what they can do to impact the laws. And to your point, everyone is like, oh, Washington, D.C. But what happens on the state level is the thing that affects our lives. What happens on the local level is the thing that we feel the most. So here in the state of Florida, you have two chambers. You have the state house and you have the state senate. The state house has 120 members and the state senate has 40 members. So what happens is that we have things called committee weeks, which we are in now. Committee weeks is when that we have presentations and that people who file bills, you have your bills heard because your bills have to move through the committee process, right? So you have to get a hearing on your bill. And once you get a hearing on your bill, it will move through that process. And if it passes its committee successfully in both chambers, it will get to the floor of each chamber. And those bills have to match up. And it will go up for a vote. In the committee process, that is an opportunity for people, the public, to come and do public comments. So lawmakers are going to ask questions, they're going to debate. But what I tell people is that if they feel specifically, strongly about a bill, that if they are able to come up to Tallahassee, they come up to Tallahassee, they provide public comment. But if you are not able to come to Tallahassee, there's also an ability for you to comment to the committee online, and that your comment, whether you oppose or support a bill, will be on record. Also, an organization that I've co-founded with Dr. Byron Green College, Justice Over Everything, we actually teach people how to give effective public comments, because what we have seen in the state of Florida is that people will drive, sometimes 8 hours to Tallahassee, and that they will only be given, 30 seconds sometimes in order to comment on a bill. And that's not a time for you to meaningfully, say what you need to say. So we teach people how to do that in the parameters.
Nice.
But that in a nutshell is how the bill process happens. But there's always a space for folks in the community to be able to comment and to be able to address it. And I also will say this, if you guys will allow me, that while your state representatives and state senators are in district, meaning when they're not in Tallahassee, Tallahassee's not in session, the legislature is not in session, that is the time to build a relationship with them. That is the time to attempt to schedule appointments with them. That is the time to attempt to go on Zoom and talk with them, because it's hard when it's in Tallahassee, because I could have 15 to 20 meetings plus my committee schedule, and my staff is trying to get people in and out. But when you catch me in district, hey, talk to me. I have people that sit and talk to me in public. So I said, well, let's go shopping together. Since you want to talk, let's go down the aisle and talk together. Not everyone is like me though, but I do that. But what I'm saying is that start building those relationships while your representatives are in district, because then when you come up to Tallahassee, or if you're not able to come up to Tallahassee, but you're able to send an email, I can say, oh, I remember, Mona and Jeannette, they sent an email about that. And remember, they came to the office and they talked to me about that, because that allows us to have that relationship and allows you to build that credibility with that member as well, with regard to any issue that you may have a concern with.
Awesome.
So, Representative, I like two things you said. So we're getting the common people, us, who don't really follow the law like this. So I just learned that every October, no matter what, October the 1st, these laws, new rules are put in place, whether we voted on these things directly or not. And for the community who don't really follow it, we really have to follow to know what laws was coming down the plate. And you said you started a nonprofit. How do the community get involved?
So there's a lot of ways, I think.
to teach us how we should hear it, because it's not always possible for us. I know Diane, Diane Hart, sometimes used to, if you're not part of an organization, she would bring us up. Florida Rising will bring people up, but I guess we
Right.
have to get involved.
Yeah, so I always tell people to find a political home. And when I say political home, I don't mean Democrat or Republican. I don't mean that. What I mean is an organization that is that aligns with your beliefs. So my organization is Justice Over Everything. So we believe in not only equitable justice for everyone, but we also do a social component of teaching. So one of the things that we do is that you can go on our website right now, justiceovereverything.com, and we put out one pagers that are written for people, not like, it's not like a college essay. It is for regular people. We break down the bills. Or you can go to the ACLU, or you can go to the League of Women Voters. You can go to Florida Rising, and those organizations will do that. Also,
Right.
there's a tool called Lobby Tools, and if you're able to download it, there may be a fee, I'm not sure, but Lobby Tools will allow you to track all of the bills that are coming out every session. So my organization, we don't track every bill in the sense of we put it on our website. What we do is we track the ones that we think are going to impact our community the most. But Lobby Tools allows you to track every bill. So there are definitely different ways to find information. But I encourage people to have a political home. And once again, when I say that, it is not about a party. It is about an organization that aligns with your beliefs. It's about an organization that aligns with the things that you're passionate about. So if you're passionate about the environment, maybe you need to go be involved with the Sierra Club. If you're passionate about voting rights, maybe you need to become a member of the NAACP or whatever. But making sure that you are with an organization that aligns with what you believe, that is providing accurate information, not disinformation or misinformation.
Very important.
Accurate.
Yes.
I will say that again for the people. Accurate information, and making sure that they're like-minded folks and they have an ability for you to work around issues. That is what I would suggest. I mean, James, I would also defer to you. I know you have some amazing ideas when it comes to kind of that part of engagement with bills, but that's what I would, encourage initially.
Well, look, let's get into it. 10 of the most impactful laws now in effect that Jeannette and I picked out of, I think it was 100 new laws. James, you'll help us understand what these laws mean on the ground, and Representative Rayner, you'll share how these debates played out inside of the legislation. Okay? That's how we're going to do it. So we can keep you guys on time.
I think we lost her for a second, but I think she's, there we go. She's getting out of the car.
So she'll get back on. So I'm going to direct this to you. So HB 113, police pursuit and fleeing. So I understand police can now chase fleeing drivers in unmarked cars. James, how does that change the risk for Black drivers?
It puts things back the way that they were before some reforms. It's been, I always say that with civil rights, our battles don't stay won. You win them, and then somebody tries to undo whatever ground that was gained. So to give it a little bit of history, back in 2008, I remember Tampa Police Department internally changed their internal rules, and it was a result of some unfortunate incidents where police were chasing somebody over a property crime or something that wasn't worth chasing somebody over. When you engage in a high-speed police chase, it's not just the two cars that are involved. The whole community is now involved. Everyone who could be crossing the street,
Absolutely.
The person who's fleeing could, even if you have the carefulest police officers, the person who's fleeing, perhaps for a rational reason and perhaps not, they could hit somebody, they could kill somebody. So there were a number of unfortunate incidents where people had been injured or killed in police chases that in retrospect really shouldn't have happened. And so the rule was changed in 2008 to, you can only chase somebody if it's murder or kidnapping or something that's a violent crime, but you can't chase somebody over theft. You can't chase it. We know who it is, and we'll go find them later. this kind of rolls some of that back. In 2022, it was rolled back a little bit to you can now chase somebody for one of those other crimes, but with supervisor approval. This sort of takes away that decision from the local departments and makes this uniform rule that you can now chase people in an unmarked car. You can go ahead and do it. So I think it's a shame because there were really good reasons that rule was put in place.
Yeah.
There were really unfortunate events that caused them, and evidently people have forgotten about those. And I think it's going to take those types of incidents to repeat themselves before we change it back to the way that it was. But it was unnecessary to do this, I think.
I agree.
So, Representative Rayner, did you hear about the chasing, the new law about the chasing?
Yes, I remember that. And so, like, how transparent and real do you want
So
me to be?
So what we want to know,
What?
was the legislation intent here? Why?
Transparent.
So, and I'm gonna say this, and I'm not trying to be divisive when I say this. It is important that when people file bills, they understand the impact of these bills.
Mm-hmm.
The particular bill sponsor, and I will also say this, there were law enforcement agencies that were not in favor of this bill because it is actually a little dangerous.
Mhm.
Because think about the point of the fact of the matter is that, hold on, my dog is doing a lot right now. The fact of the matter is, if I am driving and I say, oh, there's an unmarked car and I have knowledge that I should pull over, and that's actually not a law enforcement officer, there's harm that could happen. Number two, I actually just, a client retained me just yesterday with this very similar situation. And he didn't know that he should have pulled over because it was an unmarked vehicle. When the lawyers, criminal defense lawyers in the legislature said this is not a good idea, law enforcement agencies said this is not a good idea, this particular representative who I think you should know your lane about what you're smart at and what you're not smart at. I'll say that. You should know your lane. When he was told that the issues with this bill, some of the issues that Attorney Shaw brought up, he disregarded that. But also you have to understand, sometimes people put forth bills specifically if there is money behind them or their campaigns. So even if they know and they've been told why these bills are not maybe, non-starters or they don't work, they will still move forward. So there was a very robust debate. I believe I voted down on that bill because it makes literally no sense.
Right. And we know these laws that we picked out, how it would either harm or benefit the Black community. And we know that we will have these wild chases, mostly in the Black community. You're just not going to see that anywhere. Like he said, over a house robbery or something like that. And I don't know. Yeah, this unmarked cars and pulling over, it's just not safe for us.
It's not safe at all. And it actually makes no sense. And the other problem is that while the law was still problematic as it was, this makes it even more problematic. And once again, just even from a criminal defense perspective, how is a person who gets charged with fleeing to elude, you have an expectation for them to pull over, for them to know that that is a law enforcement vehicle when they may not have thrown on the lights. What is the knowledge for them to know? And once again, to the point that y'all have made, that's not going to damage or harm people in communities that don't look like us.
Right.
It's we are the ones, whether you are Black, Hispanic, whether you are a poor white person. So I need people to understand that as well. Like those are where that is going to happen the most.
But
Absolutely.
think about women driving alone, car behind them is following them. Let's say it's a dark road rule. I don't know. I would be afraid to stop. I don't know that I would stop. Until I got to a well-lit, lighted area. But there have been stories of that happening in the past where somebody who's impersonating pulls over someone and the rest is, needs not to be said because this is dangerous for women. It's all I'm saying.
1,000%. I mean, I drive to Tallahassee, every week,
Exactly.
and I drive the back road, and I'm a woman that's driving by, a Black woman driving by myself.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. The math doesn't math here.
No.
And here's the thing, because I remember when all that was happening, when my daughter first started driving in probably 2015, and told her at night, if she was to get pulled over, make sure you pull over in a well-lit spot. Because coming home, we have some, but put your emergency lights on to let the officer know you recognize that you see him. And just as surely as I told her that it happened right outside of our house, and when he got to the car, she called me. And when he got to the car, he says, "No, you have to pull over immediately." And he said, she told him, "Well, I have my emergency lights. I was trying to get to light." He said, "No, you have to pull over immediately."
Oh.
And that worked out good. He just told her she had just got her car. She didn't have her headlights on. And I told her, "Dad, why isn't her headlight set to come on automatically?" These kind of incidents that we cannot afford to have these kind of stops, because it could always go left quickly. Now, we do know for the most part it don't, but the ones that do, it's just crazy for us, so it's unsafe. In the less interaction we have with the police is better, in my opinion.
Yeah, agree.
Agreed.
All right, let's go to the next one, HB 687, Trenton Law, DUI, vehicular homicide. Now, these tougher penalties sound like justice, but do they really reduce crashes or just expand incarceration? Because when I was reading this, I didn't understand. So, James Shaw, can you explain this one to us?
Yeah, this is it's called Trenton's Law, and a lot of these statutes often have an unfortunate story behind them, and that someone decided to pass some reactive legislation in response to it. So this was somebody who was struck by it was a DUI manslaughter by somebody who had a previous DUI manslaughter, and so someone's kind of knee-jerk response was, well, let's increase the penalty for DUI manslaughter. So the second DUI manslaughter, it increases the maximum from 15 years to 30 years. Now, is that going to stop one DUI manslaughter? I don't think so. I mean, I think the prospect of spending 15 years in prison is enough to, if that doesn't stop you from driving intoxicated, the extra 15 is not going to stop you. I mean, people do it because they don't think they're going to get caught. They don't think that they're going to cause them. So I don't think it's going to stop anybody from doing it. What it is going to do is keep somebody incarcerated for an extra 15 years that when they really didn't need to be. I mean, 15 years is a long time if you think about the maturity difference between a 25-year-old and a 40-year-old.
The law of diminishing returns is
right. So I mean, this to me, I don't think that this is going to do anything to prevent what happened to Trenton, but it's going to put a lot more people spending decades behind this.
Let me ask, either one of you guys can answer this. Is that a mandatory, or is it left up to the judge discretion?
Do you answer, Michelle?
I can't remember. Let me look it up, James. I don't know if you have.
I think it's a maximum. It raises the
maximum. Yeah, I don't think it's a minimum mandatory. I think it's just up to.
Now, I remember a case when I lived in Miami when somebody had a DUI manslaughter and she pled guilty, and while she was waiting for to be sentenced on the first one and probably would have gotten probation, she got a second one. Wow. And the judge did give her the maximum sentence and said, "I just can't trust you to be out. You were not supposed to be driving. You were driving anyway. You were driving drunk. It was her friend that was the passenger that she had killed." And the judge felt like you're going to kill somebody else unless you're not driving a car, and I can't just trust you to not drive a car because I already did, and you drove one anyway, and you drove one. There are people like that, but I think they're the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah. what I have to say, just looking through this and really talking to our communities and to our young people. I often say, I can remember when I was, I think legal age when I started was 18. So now it's 21. And I can remember telling my daughter, please, please, if you're out and you're having drinks and you think you've had too much, come on, leave the car, take an Uber, call me, call your father. Do not drive drunk.
Right.
We will probably go down there poor trying to keep you out of jail. And it just doesn't work the same for black and brown as it might for someone else. Because I hear judges all the time says, oh, I can't destroy his life. But when it comes to somebody like me, I don't know. We have to spend a lot of money to keep our kids, and even adults. I mean, guys, we gotta. And then, two, you don't want to live with killing someone anyway. You don't want to live with that conscience.
Yeah, but I think people get behind a wheel thinking this is not going to happen to me. There's an incident that just happened, I guess, but maybe a week ago with the ICE officer who's driving with 2 kids in his car.
Yeah.
And they pulled him over, but he pretty much said, "Hey, I'm one of you," and
Mhm.
tried to get out of it, but he had to go.
Well, we're gonna have to follow that and see what goes further, because now they did pick him up, took him in, but let's see if he gets. We'll follow it.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with him, and I will be following that because it's to America's story here.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great conversation for everybody to have with their kids, though. That I don't want you out there drinking, but I certainly don't want you killing somebody or getting killed
Correct.
yourself or getting into the criminal justice system. So call me and I'll come pick you up and we'll discuss it later, or get an Uber, but just don't. No one thinks it's going to happen to them, but
Until it does.
happens, your life is permanently changed and probably someone else's too. It's just not worth the risk.
So
I mean,
the
to your point, that's why I drove to Tallahassee this morning. I was representing a young woman, goes to FAMU, was hanging out with her friends. It wasn't, she was not charged with the DUI vehicular manslaughter, but it was a vehicular manslaughter nonetheless, late. And her life is forever changed. And never been in any trouble, never whatever. And the prosecutor, I mean, is graduating with honors from FAMU at the end of 2026. And the prosecutor is like, yeah, I want in prison. And I said, huh?
Yeah.
I said, huh?
Yeah. See, this is what I'm saying. Yeah.
So what's the question? The question then is, if the law says we're going to add another 15, what's the alternative? What could happen instead of adding to the sentence?
I mean, to the James's point, I think the judge could, do probation up to 30 years. I think James, brought up a really good point. A lot of times when these bills get brought up, especially as a lawmaker, they really pull on your heartstrings. The bill sponsor will come up and say, well, could you imagine if it was your child? Could you imagine if it was and if you use your logic and say, like, I am so sorry that this happened, but I also understand the unintended consequences for our community, because I'm not trying to ensure that people, more people go to prison. You have to balance that, because then you get labeled as, you don't care about the community, you don't whatever. And it's like, no, I do care about the community, but it's that false equivalence of, but I also have to balance that I know what the unintended consequences will be, not only just for Black and Brown folks, but for everyone.
Yeah.
And so, but they use that emotional pull to say, well, if you cared, this shouldn't happen to, and it's that false narrative of, well, if you vote down on this bill, you don't care what happened to this family or other families like that. Absolutely not. That's not true. But that's what they do. And it is to James's point. I don't think that this is going to stop. This is going to stop this type of behavior. If it does, great, praise God. But we've seen that, stats have showed us that increased penalties don't stop criminal offenses from occurring.
Can you imagine if somebody had said, I got an idea. If you want to actually stop this from happening, what about a law that says that anybody who's intoxicated can call the police and the police have to give them a free ride home? And that would stop so many people from getting killed. But if you went to Tallahassee and suggest that, they'd say, "What are you, crazy?"
Correct.
Let's put people in prison for an extra 15 years. That makes sense, but I don't want an officer maybe giving somebody a ride home who didn't need it. So that it's not really about. I don't think that it's really about preventing these kinds of things. It's about punishing them.
That's you're absolutely right.
And I often say most of these things are about money, keeping the prison system occupied, these red light cameras, and things so on. But let's stay on task.
Yes. So let's go on to HB 437, electronic monitoring. Now, this is really kind of crazy to me, but okay, I wasn't there. Michelle's going to let us know what the conversation had to be around. This law lets judges revoke release if a monitor malfunctions. So if the GPS signal drops on an ankle bracelet, the battery dies, or the equipment fails for any reason, even one outside of the person's control, get this, the court can treat it as a violation of release conditions. James, is that even legal or constitutional?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
That's it doesn't say that, but it's likely that that's going to be the practical effect. The words that it uses are that you have to affirmatively act to disable it, but what does that mean? Does that mean you didn't charge the battery? Does that mean you got it wet? Does and I think practically speaking, if the signal drops off, you're now in a position of trying to prove that it wasn't your fault, and so you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt from the
that's what it sounds like.
I mean, it already was the law that if somebody tampers with their monitor, that the judge can say, okay, well, obviously this monitor thing doesn't work with you because you tamper with it, and put you back into pretrial detention. But I don't know how necessary this was to create a remedy for something that there already was a remedy for, but it does create concerns that that maybe you're going to be put in a position where it malfunctions and no one's going to believe you. You're going to have to prove that it was a malfunction.
Yeah.
So Representative Rayner, was those concerns raised during the debate, or what was the thinking when you guys came?
So this was filed by Representative Dan Daly, who's a Democrat. And he, on his bill explanation of why he filed it, he said, I filed this to enhance the integrity of our criminal justice system by imposing stricter penalties on individuals who tamper with electronic monitoring devices. By removing these devices, offenders could disappear and potentially commit more crimes while avoiding accountability. So the bill reclassifies the offenses. But to James's point, I think that the concerns are, and Rep. Hart voted no on it in committee and brought up those issues. I want to see who else voted no. Bracy Davis voted no as well. I don't really understand the point of this bill. It did pass the House. I don't really understand the point of this bill. I think what happened throughout the process, he reclassified.
Can I pause you for there? Because something just clicked. Now, you said this was a Democrat who brought this bill to the floor, and you just told us who voted no against it. Is it any way, because I don't want to put you in any position, is it any way for us to look it up and be able to see who voted yes for this?
Yeah, you can go to myfloridahouse.gov or floridahouse.gov, and every bill you can look up to see. And I actually looked at this bill, and I myself, Gant, Nixon, we voted yes. And so what I went back, and you can also see the iterations of how the bill was amended. So initially the bill started off very, very rough. And I think when it passed the floor, there was only one no vote on the floor, and that was Rep. Campbell. And what I believe happened, that the bill got amended, which means that the bill changed over time because some of the concerns that were brought up were addressed, and that James brought up were addressed. So that is why I think it was able to pass. But also, those were concerns though that were brought up initially in the committee. And so the folks that voted no in the committee voted yes on the floor. And I think when I'm going through, so when you go to like myfloridahouse.gov, y'all can go any bill you want to look at, put the bill number in, you can see the whole history of the bill, what happens in committee, how people voted, how the bill was amended before it got to the floor, if it ever got signed into law, if it died, if it did. So there's an accountability metrics for everyone. So if people are like, oh, I didn't do that. No. You could go there and look and see yourself. And so the bill ended up getting amended. I think to James's point, though, we're going to have to see how it happens, how it plays out in practical life. It is about, yes, if you actually had the intent to tamper with it, but in my Oprah meme, so yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to the next one, the SB 168, Trenton Murphy Act, mental health diversion. Now, this one sounds, I would say compassion, allowing courts to send people into treatment instead of jail. But without funding, does it really work? And let me tell you why I say this, because I can remember how I was a big opponent of Biden with this crime bill. And I can remember when ICSO, I don't know what it used to be something for people who had drug addiction. And we could never have enough funding for people inside of our community.
Do you mean DACO?
DICO could have been.
Okay.
Did they have like a place? Is DICO was the place where people could go stay for 60 or 90 days to help get clean?
I don't. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was DICO. Could have been that. And when we have things like this, like I said, I'm concerned about how would this benefit us, our community. Right. Sean, James, can you help us with that?
This bill, it's not a bad bill. It's but like you said, it's our legislature loves unfunded mandates. But again, like a lot of these bills, there's a sad story behind it. Tristan Murphy was a 37-year-old man. He had schizophrenia. He drove a vehicle into a pond and was charged with littering for that. And normal people don't drive vehicles into a pond on purpose. You do that because you have a mental health issue that's causing it. But we don't really have a mental health system in Florida. We don't really have state-run mental hospitals, which is where someone like him should have been. So this bill doesn't create those mental hospitals, which would have made more sense, but it took a baby step and said that what ended up happening with him was he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for littering. And during those 3 years, he ended up committing suicide. And so even some of the hardest hearts in the world that you find in Tallahassee looked at that and said, well, that's not a good outcome of this. We need to do something. But what they did was very little. It creates these diversion programs. It creates screening programs to screen people for mental illness early on in the criminal justice system and try to divert them into getting some mental help instead of feeding them into the criminal justice system. And I don't know if that would have helped Tristan Murphy or not. But it's a baby step in the right direction, as long as it's funded, as long as it actually happens the way that it's written out. It's hard for me to have a problem with this, except for maybe that it should go too far. I mean, there should be state-run mental hospitals for people like Tristan Murphy to be able to go to treatment.
On maybe Representative Michelle, you could tell us. So if someone has mental health, where do they go? I'm thinking Grace Point.
They can go to Grace Point. So there are state mental health hospitals, but the process to get someone in those state mental health hospitals through the criminal justice system is very, it's a lot. It's very cumbersome. Your attorney has to file a motion. You have to go through, get tested to show that you're incompetent. And then they have to decide if you could be restored back to competency. And then you have to do that. Like, it's like, not like, oh, I have a mental health problem and here's the history of mental health I have. And then the judge says, I think you should go there. Now we have mental health courts here, like in Hillsborough County and throughout the state. But once again, people fall through the cracks. And so this particular bill, I do agree with James, it's not a bad bill, but here's what the legislature does. Because this bill, one, has what we call a fiscal. So for those people who understand, fiscal just simply means it's money that's attached to it. This is going to cost money. And the legislature likes to James's point, unfunded mandates, and they like to pay for what they want to pay for. They don't like to pay for what should be paid for. They pay for what they want to pay for. Right. And so this bill is great, and it is a tiny step forward, one of the pilot programs is happening here in Hillsborough County. But my concern is that if we don't have the money behind it to actually put forth, how is it actually going to help folks? And not just a certain amount of folks, but how is it going to, solve the problem? So what I'm assuming happens, and sometimes bills like this happen, is they allow the pilot program to happen. They'll come back in a year or two and say, these are the results from the pilot program. And depending if there is a particular legislator that either they're still in the legislature or someone has picked up the mantle to want to continue this, they will then say, this is what's happened. This is, this is why we should, fund it, fund this program to expand or to make sure that we can do it in more counties. I think it is good in its idea. It's always, how is it going to look practically?
Okay.
All right. All right. So let's move on to deep fakes.
Oh, yes.
HB 757, I would say the digital sex images. So protecting people from non-consensual images is overdue. James, how big of a step forward is this?
It's probably too big of a step forward. Again, like there's a sad story behind this. It was I think, what's it called, Brooks Law, or it was the daughter of the mayor of Jacksonville. I think that somebody that it wasn't someone she knew, it was a complete stranger, had generated these AI generated deep fake images of her nude. And once they're out on the internet, you can never really put you can't really put the in the bottle. So, so those were out there and continuing to haunt her. And so, and some of these images, you really can't tell the difference between that and a real one. Here's where I wonder if it went a little bit too far. Y'all watch South Park? If you saw a couple of months ago, the debut episode, they had an AI generated image of the president wandering through the desert in the nude, and they made fun of his body parts and so forth. But if you watched that image, that on South Park, it really did look real. I mean, you knew that this obviously didn't happen, but if you were showing it to somebody that with no context, they'd have a hard time distinguishing between that, image, that computer generated image and footage of something that really happened. And I looking at the text of this legislation, it probably made that a crime to watch that or possess that or have, and obviously that is constitutionally protected speech. So it's an area of law that we don't like to talk about because, I don't want people making images like that. That's disgusting. But there's whether something's disgusting or not, and whether or not the government has the power to punish you for doing it in the privacy of your own home are two different questions. I remember a case maybe 20 years ago from Polk County, and it was a man who was volunteering from a church, and he was taking photographs of people in the church, and including children, and then he would cut out their heads and paste them onto nude magazines. And if somebody found out he was doing that, and they charged him with generating child pornography. I don't know if that's what he was really doing. I mean, it's kind of gross, but he was doing it in his own home on his own kitchen table, and I don't know if the Constitution lets the government regulate that. So this statute purports to do that. I think it probably goes a little bit too far, and it's going to be judicially restricted a little bit. But I think everybody's okay with the idea that you shouldn't be able to generate an image that makes it appear as if a private citizen is engaged in some sexual activity they never really were, and then publish that and use it to embarrass and humiliate them. I think that's probably okay to ban that, but this goes a lot further, and it bans even things like what was aired on South Park, and it makes it a crime for you to have even watched that episode of South Park, and I think that probably is too far.
Real quick question though. Do you know if other countries are further along with regulating the internet or AI than we are here in the United States?
They are, because one of the bills that I filed and got passed has actually been adopted by Australia, New Zealand, I think Finland, James, I respectfully disagree with you about this bill. I voted for it. I think these two ladies know that they know personally, I've seen it, that I have been harassed on the internet. I've had deep fakes done of me by former partners, and I'm an adult, right? And what we're seeing, I think, is our children kind of being, targeted in a way. And I know that I've run into it not only just in my practice as an attorney, but also as a legislator. And even one of the bills that I'm doing this year is even about the AI chat boxes that are targeting children online. And so for me, I would rather us be in these kinds of situations. And I know this sounds crazy for me to say as a defense attorney and as a civil rights attorney, but I would rather for us to take maybe an extra step to make sure people are protected. And then, and if we have to roll it back, we need to. But I'm able to handle it, and I'm a grown person, right? And it is still very harmful, and it's still very hurtful. And once it is out on the internet, it lives forever. And I've had that happen by people that I've been in partnership with, right? So I don't know where we would that. Now, most certainly, do we go into people's houses without a warrant and say, "Oh, I think you're, doing porn," and putting it together? No, obviously there's a law, there's a way to follow it. But at what point, where do we?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? That's just my thought.
There's a line. It sounds like you agree with me that there's a line somewhere. I don't think you'd go as far as to say that the guys who made South Park ought to be, President Trump should be able to sue them, and anybody.
No, I don't think that they should. I don't think that they should. But right. I think that if you are, obviously that I think that, a reasonable person can know that that's obviously not real, that is for, satire and for jokes. But where's the line is when this happens to someone, a young, and really we're seeing this with young women, but I mean, just even with children, what is that line? You know what I mean? And so for me, it's I think that maybe it's a case by case, but I mean, I proudly voted up. I was in committee, and not only did this young girl come in, testify, Brooke, but other young women of color came in and testified and saying that they, when they tried to, kind of get some, help or resolve from law enforcement, their hands was tied. And thank God, this girl, this happened to her, unfortunately, but, her dad happened to be the mayor of Jacksonville. And that's probably the only reason that this even got this far, because her dad was a Republican mayor of Jacksonville, right? And, went to someone in the legislature. But I think about so many young women that I've come encountered with that in our community that this happens to, and nobody listens to them because they don't care.
Right. Well, okay, that one's but that one might be on my list. That I don't care either if it's an overreach, if it's going to protect us,
Yeah, I think the courts are going to draw the line, and at some point they'll say, well, what South Park did, the First Amendment protects whether you are happy with that or not. I don't think the courts are going to say it's on the other side of the line to say if you're targeting a minor, the way AI works is that it's taking an existing image and it's manipulating that image. It's not creating it out of whole cloth like somebody who's taking a pen and paper and drawing a picture. It's actually using an image of a child to generate another image of a child. So that's different. And I think the courts would see that as different, especially when you're talking about children. When you're talking about private citizens, I think that using harassment is not federally First Amendment protected speech, but when you get to public figures, you're getting into a different place, and when you get into this actually says it's a crime to possess or generate or view it, even if no one sees it but you, and that starts to get into regulating thought crimes. So it is.
But I have a question then. So if we think about it like that, I mean, if someone has child pornography, right, and no one, they're the only person that views it, they're the only person that sees it, they're the only person, whatever, they don't disseminate it, they don't do anything. You could argue that, well, they shouldn't be charged with child pornography. They should have,
because a child was actually harmed in the making of it.
But even if AI does not actually harm a child per se, manipulating an image of a child with AI, that is still per se harmful.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that's the difference between somebody drawing a picture with a pen and paper and somebody generating AI images, that they actually victimized somebody to make the AI images. It started with another pre-existing image and made a derivative image of that. Saturday Night Live made a great joke when they said, this law passed that banned that, but isn't that what you would want these guys to look at, the AI generated images? In fact, all they do is start with original images of children. Okay, I see the problem. That was his joke, but that's the difference, is that you're starting with a real image and actually victimizing somebody. But it would be harder to criminalize somebody who can take a pen and paper and draw an image of something that we don't think is they should be drawing images of, but that whether we think they should be doing that or not, whether the government can punish them for doing it, are two different questions.
And that's where you and I differ. Go ahead and lock them up.
Well, I don't know.
Not that I don't understand that point of view, but
I don't know where the line
I'm
is.
usually like set them free, but I don't know.
I don't know where the line is, but that certainly merits a lot more discussion around this, because I'm not sure.
I don't know. This might be a rare bipartisan win. Everyone could agree on the digital dignity, and we just got to find out where the line is.
Yeah.
I really believe we ought to look at what other countries are doing who are much further along in the discussions around these things than we are, for whatever reason that we've chosen to not be the leader in this area.
We have the First Amendment and countries don't, so that we have a constitutionally enshrined right of free speech, and countries do not have that. And so a lot of speech can be more easily regulated in other countries than it can here, at the price of somebody that you don't like saying something that you don't want to hear. But that's the price that we pay for having a First Amendment.
I mean, and I love the First
Amendment. That's being bastardized, huh?
Yeah, it is 100% being bastardized. And I love the First Amendment, but I also think that, once again, and this is going to be like a real deep hole, and I will pull us out of it real quick. But that also goes to the money aspect of what's in politics. That also goes to like ending Citizens United, being able to have these companies, these social media companies, being able to fund people. I mean, we saw that with Twitter, we saw that with Facebook, we saw that with whomever, being able to infuse tons of money in special interest, tons of that into politics. And so I'm going to pull us out of that, but I just want to drop a pin there.
Let's put a pin in that. And Mona, this is a discussion that we can take further on another time.
Sure. So, well, let's go to the next bill, SB 948, flood risk disclosure for renters. Tenants now have the right to know if their home floods. James, how can renters enforce that?
Well, it doesn't. A lot of people don't realize until it's too late that when you sign a lease for a year, if something happens to the house, that lease does not automatically end. So if you rent a house and a week into your lease, a tornado knocks it down, whether or not you still owe rent, even though there's no house anymore, depends on the language of the agreement. It doesn't automatically terminate. This gives an automatic termination for a flood if it was disclosed to you that there was prior damage, or that there was a prior FEMA claim, or that there's a flood risk. If that's disclosed to you, it still doesn't automatically terminate your lease. What it does is it lets you get out of the lease if your home is destroyed by a flood and nobody alerted you to the risk. So
So what happens in the event, because last year with the two hurricanes, Milton and Helena, a lot of apartments, and I know the city helped a lot of homeowners, but not particularly the renters who are renting apartments, and their apartments flooded. But apparently, those apartments was flooding before.
Mhm.
And if I'm going to if I'm going to lease an apartment, would that requires those people to tell me that the bottom floor is likely to be flooded in a hurricane or heavy rain?
Not with this bill. I don't think with this bill. This is for real residential property and/or a mobile home park. I mean, you could argue that perhaps, apartment complexes, but what I'm thinking is like standalone homes, those kinds of things. Because to your point, and to James's point, this isn't even an automatic termination. They may do it, but you still have to go through the process of, sending your notice, sending your whatever. And I feel like this is also, if the landlord fails to disclose the flood information truthfully, and then the tenant suffers substantial loss, then the tenant may. So I don't think so. It's really, from my reading of the bill, and if I'm remembering it correctly, it's if the landlord fails to tell you that this has flooded before, and you flood, and then 95% of your things are gone and it's unlivable, you may have the option, not the automatic option, you have the option to do that. So I don't think it goes far enough, because to your point, a lot of our renters are not in like standalone homes, they're in apartments.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a baby step. It doesn't. It's not going to help that many people, but if it helps somebody, great. But I'd have rather seen a statute that says if the home becomes unlivable because of flood, you can terminate the lease.
Period.
The lease says that or not, but they didn't go that far.
Okay. Let's go with HB 7031, the repeal of the commercial lease tax. So ending this tax sounds good for business, but who actually benefits? Either of you can answer that. Talk to that.
Hold on, I'm gonna look at this up. I think
I understand it. It cut me off if you understand it better than I do, Michelle. But as I understand it, Florida was one of the few states that even had that tax, and so that part of the argument for eliminating sales tax on commercial leases is, well, other states don't really charge that either. Why should we? And of course, the answer to that is Florida's unique. We don't have an income tax, and income taxes are graduated by income level. The more money you make, the higher rate you pay, but that's not true of sales taxes. So historically, tourism's been such a boom in Florida that you can have a sales tax and let the tourists pay for most of the government, or at least that was the thinking at the time. But whenever you cut off one source of revenue, everything still costs the same amount. The money has to come from somewhere else. So it's going to move that tax burden from one place to another place. But where's that other place? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, so I actually remember this bill. This is actually something that Representative Hart and Representative Anna Escamani really actually fought for. And so they've both been on Ways and Means. I used to be on Ways and Means. I'm going to tell you, I'm a policy wonk. I really don't ask me taxes. No, thank you. But they've been on this particular issue with regarding to revises the purposes of which a county may use tax revenues derived from tourist development tax, so the TDD tax, and also this particular bill. And if I want to make sure that I am very clear on it. This particular bill is 201 pages, so it's not just only the commercial leases, it's the tourist development taxes. There's issues about parimutuel, which is horse like riding, training, gambling, and So there is also in this particular bill, there is requiring notice for schedule appearance before the Value Adjustment Board, requiring the board to allow petitioners to appear at hearings using certain. So I mean, this bill, so when we have the tax bill it is everything that they've worked on for the whole session. But it's also a good way, I'm going to plug this for folks, that if you can't get an appropriation, sometimes you can get it through the tax bill. And you can get your money there. We'll talk about that at a later date. I'm trying to help the people.
Look at for those who know.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm trying to help the people.
Yeah, thank you for that one. All right, we're gonna go to the next one. What time is it?
6:59.
Yeah, almost at 7 o'clock. So
hour. Mm-hmm.
So HB 253, and this one I was kind of interested in, the license plate alteration device. Now, even tenant covers can trigger a citation or an arrest. Is this another reason for the profiling?
I'm trying to think about this.
We were looking. I was looking at the language of it. So it says it makes it a crime to cover or obscure or otherwise interfere with the legibility, angular visibility, or detectability of any feature or detail. There's the play of the license plate. So what is feature or detail? Well,
exactly,
covering up the numbers would trigger it, and probably covering up the sticker that shows whether you're current. But if it says where it says sunshine at the bottom, if you cover that, is that a feature or detail? Or if it's one of those specialty license plates that has the name of one of the universities or sports teams on it, and part of that's covered up, is that going to be violating the statute? It doesn't.
James, I checked. Mine is covered. Sunshine State. Everything else is, you can see, but Sunshine State is covered by the little frame that you get when you buy the car or when you put your university frame on.
I don't think it's covered.
Well, I'm going to jail then because my sorority frame isn't behind it.
Yes, I think it's the ones you guys put on, not the ones you buy from the dealership, because I've noticed that.
But it's covered.
But if it's too obscure, so basically, like for example, if you know you're riding dirty, for the lack of a better term, right, and then you get something to obscure you from being able to tell like your license plate or whatever, like right now they could see your number. If they could see your tag number,
that should be enough.
Correct.
But they're saying that they need to be able to see Sunshine State, and if that license tag plate isn't from really the dealership and it's something you bought and you put on, it's going to cover Sunshine, and that is something I want our community to be aware of. Now, you need to tell me if that's true or not, because we don't need these cops just pulling us over for that, because it looked like to me, if you could see the number, you should be able to run the tag and know that it's a state of Florida.
Correct. I will actually look into that. I will actually.
But they want to be able to see Sunshine State. And what I noticed, if you leave the original tag from the dealership, you'll be able to see it, because mine, it curves around it.
Not always. I'm just
not
saying.
Always.
No, not always.
And if that's the case, then why would they put this law in place like this?
But to James's point, and I think Michelle is also saying, I'm going to look into that. The key phrase is any feature or detail. What does that really entail? And if Sunshine State is covered from a dealer tag or something you bought from the university, are you in violation of this law? That's a simple question.
One day when I'm a judge, I'll say absolutely not. The whole purpose of this is because it was to ban devices that made your tag opaque when someone tried to photograph it, or I guess there's a device where you can press a button and a different license plate number will cover the real one. And
yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense why you would want to criminalize that. But the word sunshine, is that a feature or detail? Here's reality. If the police officer that's looking for an excuse to pull you over decides that it does mean that, then
what
it
I'm
does in that moment. A judge might later change, say that he was wrong, but you've gone through a whole lot of trouble between those two moments before the judge decides that he was wrong. So
and sometimes that trouble results in death for very minor traffic violations. So this, I think, pretty important that it's clear.
the legal term
I'm actually gonna ask staff if they've got any feedback on this, because that's interesting. Also, the bill sponsor.
Yes. We want little interaction with the cop. As
Shoot, I want as little as possible. So
and if it's as simple as changing out that plate, then we just change out the plate or just remove it.
Yeah, I think it can be as simple as that in terms of solution. So let's move to 9, and so we can move this along. HB 1365, public camping restrictions. This effectively criminalizes homelessness. What is, Attorney James, what's your stance on this?
This is another one where we made progress and it's now being rolled back. I mean, there was a class action lawsuit in Miami in the early 2000s about whether or not the city can criminalize poverty like this. And you can't say that it's against the law to sleep outside if there's nowhere to go that's not outside for that particular person. There has to be something that I don't. It's not that I don't understand. Like if you've read in the newspaper, the restaurant Shiso Crispy in St. Petersburg has filed a lawsuit against the city of St. Petersburg, arguing that they're not enforcing this, and her lawsuit lists some of the things that she's had to deal with people congregating outside of her business and throwing feces at her and bothering her customers. And it's not that I don't understand that, but you're talking about people that don't have anywhere else to go, and so you can't pass a law that says wherever you are it's illegal to be there. There has to be somewhere that they can go. Now this creates a mechanism where a city can designate a particular place, but I think that this is probably going to be held unconstitutional. But like a lot of these statutes, they're enforced until they're held unconstitutional, and that's a lengthy process. Once a law is passed, it's the law until it isn't, and that can be some amount of time. So I'm very unhappy about this law. I mean, I understand some of the problems it was intended to solve, but I don't think that "not in my backyard" is the way to solve them.
Yeah,
no,
I agree.
We also had that local here in Tampa, when the downtown Tampa made it illegal to sleep on the benches downtown. And so I said, so where are they going to push them? Then they went on Nebraska. The people on Nebraska don't want them. Where are you going to push them? Further into East Tampa. It's that one's hard.
Yes.
Discussion like on this one.
So this bill was actually passed in 2024. You can, when you go to the My Florida House, you can go, it'll say like bill, you can go to like 2024. So I actually filed 2 amendments. I filed an amendment on this because first off, the debate was insane. So like myself, Rep. Escamani, Nixon, Gant, Henson, Valdez, when she was a Democrat, filed amendments on it. And one of the amendments that I filed on it was because they wanted to do these encampments, right? And so basically what prevented someone who either has a history of sexual violence, a history of domestic violence, for being in these encampments, and or if your person that has violated you is there, is able to just kind of come, and whether there's a restrainer or whatever, there was no protection. And of course it was voted that particular amendment was voted down, but you will be able to see the different amendments that members filed. Representative Escamani she filed an amendment that that actually brought this back to the municipality to be able to vote for it if that's what they wanted, and not this to be a blanket state law. But like, so if Hillsborough County Board of Commission wanted to vote to see if they wanted to do this, or Orange County, or the city of Tampa, or whatnot, they would have the ability. That failed. I mean, at the end of the day, the debate on this bill was very robust. I think that ultimately it's stripping people of their dignity, regardless if they're unhoused or not. Everyone has dignity. And there are better ways to solve the houseless problem. We've seen other countries solve it. We've seen some other cities solve it. And as I tell people, and as I have said very clearly on the floor, a budget is a moral document. So what you care about is where you will put your money at. What bills you file is what you care about. So this bill let me know that you care about certain types of people. You don't care about everybody. Because if you cared about everybody, you would actually have policy that would solve the actual problem, instead of harming and criminalizing and punishing people with the problem. And so, I mean, it's a disgusting bill. Like, I mean, I'll say it's disgusting. I do agree with James. I know it's being litigated. I have a good friend who works for the Southern Poverty Law Center, Kirsten, that has litigated this bill successfully. Oh yeah, James, you know Kirsten.
I know her well. Yes,
Kirsten's that girl who has successfully litigated this bill. Litigated this law, and I know that it's continuing to be litigated, but it's absolutely disgusting. And like, you can't talk about the free state of Florida. That's what they love to talk about. Who is it free for? It can't be free for everybody. Yeah. It's free for who you want it to be free for, and that's not how any of this works.
Yeah, this one.
I'm not going to even say this is a Republican issue, because the city of Tampa is ran by Democrats, and we have a huge homeless problem that we have not been able to solve.
Well, I think this one hits home with me. I remember just years ago, my brother was sort of out there. I think he was suffering from some issues, was homeless here, left here and went to, I think, New York. That didn't work out. So he was homeless in New York for a while, came back here and decided he was going to go to California. He went to California, and before I know it, he was in a small apartment. He went to UCLA. He graduated from UCLA and worked for the state for the next 30 or so years. He's retired now, back in Florida, and is doing fine.
Right.
So we're talking about somebody who was homeless with some issues.
Yes.
And I don't need to mention what they were, but he was able to become a productive member of society and work for the state of California. And then came back.
As most would. So they need a hand up.
Correct.
I remember attending a meeting that West Shore Alliance held for business owners with TPD about some businesses where unhoused people congregate, and I understand the problems that they face, where people coming in and using their restrooms and so forth. But the TPD was very frankly saying a lot of these people are, they're employed. They cannot afford housing in this area anymore.
Stay right there.
And we have one tool, which is to arrest people, and you can't arrest people out of the problem. All this bill really does is it provides, you can't put people in prison for life for this, so it temporarily relocates them to the jail, and at some point you have to let them out. And
right, it's not a solution. It's
not a solution. It's just why move them into a jail if you can build housing? But if you start talking about building housing, then you get the same reaction that you get if you suggested driving intoxicated people home.
True that. Stay right there, James.
Some people really don't want to solve the problems.
They don't.
And they happen to be our legislators in many cases. They don't want to solve the problem.
I mean, to that point, Jeannette, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that myself and many of my colleagues say on the House floor. And when I talk about invoke parties, I have to also say, while it's maybe not Democrat or Republican, but I tell the Republicans, I'm like, y'all are the super majority. Y'all run everything. Like, the Democrats could technically not come to work. and y'all can do whatever y'all want to do. We don't have the laws like we have in Texas, right? Like, you know, you have to have a quorum. No, baby. If we're not there, so like there was a Republican colleague at the delegation meeting yesterday that said, oh, we need to do this for property tax and and said, oh, what I'm going to do is going to solve $12 million. I said, okay. I said, well, what about property insurance? Well, we can't do anything about it. I said, well, what do you mean we can't do anything about it? How can we not do anything about property insurance when you are the super majority? Y'all can do what you want to do. So to your point, I'll say what the kids say, if they wanted to, they would.
Right. Right. But instead they create narratives that get out into the public, and all of a sudden we're all repeating the narratives when they have complete control, but they're not going to say that.
Correct.
So anyway, what's next, Mona?
Open carry. We say this one for last. So we want to talk about, I think in our community, we got a lot of stuff going on with guns, the new gun laws, open carry, stand your ground. So we're not going to really touch stand your grounds. We just want to talk about open carry and guns in car law, because with open carry being legal, what should drivers know during a traffic stop? How should they handle that? Shaw, can you start us off on that one?
Yeah. Well, open. You're right. There's a difference between open carry and stand your ground. I'm talking about open carry. It's, it is just dangerous to have a gun on you and displayed. I mean, you're asking for people to interact with you in a different way than they would if they didn't see that. And sometimes
let me stop you there, because I don't mean where it would. I don't think people will be driving around and a gun sitting in the. But say if it's in your glove compartment, mm-hmm. and the officer asks you, because I'm thinking about the guy. Who was that guy who got killed in the office? He was in the driver's.
Orlando Castile.
So that's the case I'm thinking about. So when the officer asked him, "Do you have a gun?" he said yes. And the guy just lost his mind and started shooting the guy. So now everybody is able to have a gun now. And
right. I want to know that, but also talk about the fact that it's open carry and I can just carry it on my person into Publix, for example. So let's try to address both.
Well, I'm also talking about in the car, because that's where most of us will have our issue.
I'm good.
If you get pulled over and they ask, I don't know, are they still asking these days since it's open?
They are. They're still asking, because that's an officer safety issue. So they're still asking, do you have any weapons in the car? Then they will probably run your background to make a determination if you're lawfully able to carry a weapon. Like, so if you're not a convicted felon. And now I don't know that a concealed weapon, I don't even think that that's a real thing anymore. Like, that charge is a real thing. You just have to say that. But I think open carry, taking it from being in your vehicle to what Jeannette was saying, I think it's two prongs. Obviously, being in your vehicle and having the ability to carry a weapon, but then also having the ability just to walk around with it on your hip. Not the smartest idea that we've ever thought about, guys. Like, just not smart, but.
Except you can do that.
Now you can. And Publix say you can come in our store. We're shopping as a pleasure. Exactly. We're shopping as a pleasure. But also businesses do have the right to say that you can't come in there with weapons. Obviously you can't in courthouses, you can't do it, certain other locations. But I think one of the states that's notorious for, gun violence, and they've had open carry is Utah. Like, they're notorious for it. And I disagree with the Attorney General's interpretation of the law. I will tell you, he's not known for his legal acumen and being such a legal scholar. But what I think is going to happen, that there's going to be a lawmaker that is going to file a bill to cover them, to ensure that it can be enshrined in statute. That's what I think is going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very concerned, because I don't think I need to say out loud that the police react very differently to an African American with a gun than a white person with a gun. And I believe, don't hold me to it, but I think it was Diep Kamau that had done. He had actually done experiments where he had a white person walk around with a rifle and a black person walk around with a rifle, and observe and videotape the different law enforcement reactions to those two different things. I don't have to tell you what the results were. So it is, it's dangerous to be walking around with that. And it not even somebody else's reaction to you, but how much do you trust your own even-handedness and your ability to not overreact to a situation? I mean, we can all rattle off even recent situations that would have ended at worst with a punch in the nose that now end with criminal charges, or that can end with a fatality. And it's just the few instances where somebody has said, I'm sure glad I had a weapon on me, are eclipsed by all the times where something awful happened that would never have happened if somebody hadn't been carrying.
And I will say this, my concern, and while this is not a stand your ground issue, I think that you can make this comparison. Stand your ground is disproportionately affects African Americans in the way that it is applied. And I think, to James's point, the way that open carry it will be applied will disproportionately affect African Americans, because we've already seen in recent history in our very own city that if one person that looks a certain way is able to open carry, nothing really happens. Another person that looks another way that is open carry, and both people pulled a weapon.
Yeah.
Someone gets arrested and someone doesn't. And one is white and one is black. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So I think at some point we also have to be mindful how is this law going to be applied? And once again, if stand your ground and other laws have shown us how the applicability to Black folks and people of color, why this would follow the same realm of thought of it being applied.
So let me ask you this, because that was a question that I had got. If you got pulled over and you do have a weapon in the car, are you obligated to say you do? Or would it be just safe for us to say no if they don't see it?
See, I don't believe in answering questions from law enforcement, so that's just me. I will give.
You have to answer the goddamn question that the officers, when they pull you over.
You answer your name, you provide your license. That's it. James, you may have a different school of thought, but as a defense attorney, the less you say the less.
That's not going to piss. That's not going to piss Mr. Charlie off. Are you telling me that's not going to piss Mr. Charlie off? If a brother is being pulled over, he just gives him his license, his insurance, and when he asks that question, what should he say?
James, I'm gonna let you take this one. Because I have deep thoughts. I think your thoughts or my thoughts are the same, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I remember when it was 5 or 6 years ago, Michelle, we had an ACLU sponsored forum and people could ask questions, and somebody asked you this very question, and your response was, I have two answers. One is my criminal defense attorney answer, and my other one is, and I want you to survive that encounter answer.
I did say that.
They don't necessarily counsel the same results. So Philando Castile, he answered the question honestly. He said, yes, I do have a weapon and I do have a concealed carry permit. I think he even said he was a veteran, and he got shot anyway. And so it's if the police officer says, do you have a weapon in the vehicle, and you say, I'm not answering questions, you're escalating that situation, and you're putting yourself at the mercy of how well trained that officer is, of how inclined that officer is to give you the benefit of the doubt, and you might find yourself
not pull you out the car. James, you already, I did answer that question. Well, you have a great memory. That was a while ago. But no, so to his point, my answer as a Black woman, yes, you need to quote unquote comply. My answer as an attorney, absolutely not, say nothing. But my answer as an attorney, what I would say to a white person would be very different than what I would say to a Black person.
Jesus, so much for us to remember this.
I mean, that's real though. That's real.
And I'm not gonna say to our young Black men or anybody not to have your guns in your car. if you want to carry, I think we should be able
You're
to.
allowed to carry. You're legal. You have
Yes.
no felony convictions.
Yeah, it's legal, and I think that's the point. So you can't tell them they
But I
can't.
do want everyone to stay
But
safe.
well, but to James's point, they're Black,
Yeah.
and they will be received differently with
A
an
weapon.
armed weapon than I think somebody white. And you know, I don't. I'm trying to remember, but I remember reading somewhere that gun laws didn't become restricted until the Black Panthers started walking around with
Right there. Stay right there, Jeannette.
all
Stay
of a
right
sudden there became laws around guns, and now they're trying to roll some those back. But for the most part, carrying a gun was no big deal. And then the Black Panthers started walking around with guns.
And the thing about it is they're more likely to get shot from a white person than a Black person shooting a cop.
Well, very true. Very true.
All
So
right.
All right.
Let me try to give a practical answer. I would put both hands on the steering wheel where
And two.
see them and say,
And two, my dad used to say.
yes, I do have a legal weapon in this vehicle, and I'm going to be moving in slow motion throughout this entire encounter, and you know, speaking very slowly, because once a police officer knows that you have a weapon, they are on heightened fear, and they might make a really bad decision out of panic, and you could be on the receiving end of that. So,
And I would say I always keep it recording. And it's so unfortunate because when you said that, I could remember when my brother was leaving to go to college, and my parents telling him how, when he got pulled over, how to hold his hands there and do not move them. And you know, and we still there now. So unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well, we're closing. Look, guys. Representative Rayner, I know you have to go. You've already told us how we could strike these bad bills and before they become laws. So
I think we've unpacked the laws and the intentions and the loopholes. Now it's up to us. Silence is consent. So I really don't think we understand that right now. And it's really critical that we are very, very outspoken, because we are not consenting to the injustice.
100%. And
you guys want to give a closing each?
Yeah, I was going to say, if I could leave y'all with this, you know, here's the reality of the situation, whether it's on a national level, state level, local level, the awful things that are happening it's very intentional, and it's intentional to wear us out. It's intentional to tire us out. It's intentional to make sure that we can't focus on what is actually happening, because we're trying to make sure our kids can eat. We're trying to make sure they have education. We're trying to make sure you have a roof over your head. We're trying to understand why, you know, eggs cost $1 million US American dollars. We're trying to afford to live here in Florida. All of these things are intentional, but understanding, while all of these things are intentional, it is incumbent upon us to resist. And how do we resist? I'm not saying you have to go to a No Kings protest. I'm not saying that you have to go to City Hall or come to Tallahassee. But I will say this, that in the moment that we're living in, that we each have to have a profile and courage moment. And your profile and courage moment may look different than mine, but you have to have it. For some people, it may be sitting at a dinner table telling their, you know, uncle to shut up and pushing back. For some folks like me, it may be going down to Alligator Alcatraz. For some folks like Mona and Jeannette, it may be doing this podcast and making sure and pushing through and, you know, ruffling feathers. For James, it may be litigate. Whatever your profile and courage moment is, you have to have it. But also understanding, when you have that profile and courage moment, you're backed with facts. So understanding the process, understanding what's going on, finding a political home, whether it's the NAACP, the ACLU, Justice Over Everything, or Florida Rising, insert. And also understanding how you can activate your community. Because I'm not saying you got to come to Tallahassee, but you should be talking to your neighbors. You should be talking to folks in church. You should be talking to people in organizations, whatever. But it is incumbent upon us to find something to do and put our hands where we can activate our community and have that profile and courage moment, because they're counting on us not to do it. They're counting on us to be tired. They're counting on us to just kind of watch the world burn. And I understand I'm part of the 92%. And part of me wants to be like, y'all got it. But also, our ancestors were made of better stock than that. So, and we have the blood of our ancestors in our veins, and they resisted at every cost, at every point, at every turn. And that is what is incumbent upon us now in this moment to do. So that is what I would leave y'all with.
Nice.
Tell us how the community could follow you. I know you're running for Senate. Tell us a little about that.
So I'm running for state Senate. I currently represent Pinellas County and Hillsborough County. So I represent right now about 40% of the Senate district. You can follow me on Instagram at Michelle with 1 L for FL. Same at TikTok, Michelle Rayner, Rayner on Facebook. I'm pretty responsive. Honestly, it's, and I had an event last night. We were talking about, someone asked me kind of what my why was, and it's service. One of the things my mother reminded me before she died, I was with her when she transitioned, and she said to me, I need to remind you of this: to whom much is given, much is required. And one of my heroes, Shirley Chisholm, who's on my t-shirt, my sweatshirt, said, service is the rent that we pay for being on the earth. And so, I think everything that we do has to be rooted in service. And so that's why I'm hoping to continue this fight. As people say, I'm crazy. You want to continue in Tallahassee? Yeah, I want to continue because we're in a moment that we need to have bold voices, people who are not afraid, and people who are going to help our people to organize and resist what's happening, because it is actually insane. It is like, if you're a thinking person, you're just like, how does this make sense? And so, yeah, y'all can find me on socials. Half of Tampa Bay has my phone number. So if you call me, just make sure you text me so I can know who you are before you call me. And you can reach out to my office as well through our Florida. You can go to myfloridahouse.gov and find me there. My office is, we pride ourselves on being very responsive. So you guys can find me.
And I could ditto that. I think moving forward, we can't have seat warmers anymore. We got to have fighters. We got to have people that's not afraid to fight. And I can attest that you are definitely a fighter, and you do respond quickly.
James, is there any final words you have for us tonight?
Yeah, I want to go back to what Michelle said at the very beginning, which is that, once a law is passed, that's the law until it's either repealed or it's held unconstitutional. And those two things don't happen very much. The time to get involved is before the law is passed. And that requires having a relationship with your legislators. And like Michelle just said, we're working to, pay our bills and raise our kids, and to monitor legislation on top of that is too much for most people. But there are organizations like the League of Women Voters, like the NAACP, like the ACLU. If you go to the ACLU of Florida website, aclufl.org/legislation, they track all of the legislation that affects your life that you would want to know about. You can see it there. Justice Over Everything. That there are groups that can do that work for you, and find one and plug into it, and contact your legislator's office when you see that there's a bill that you think is going to affect your life. Because like we were saying, most of the media focuses on what's happening in Washington, but what happens at City Hall, what happens in Tallahassee, that affects our day-to-day lives to 100 times what happens in Washington. And it's you need to know what's happening, and you'll find that it's not as hard as you think it is to contact your members of the state Senate, or your members of the House, or your members of City Council. They're very receptive, and they don't expect you to have encyclopedic knowledge of procedures. They want to hear, how you think that some bill is going to affect you, and you're checking in with them to make sure that they're not going to vote for something that's going to make your life more difficult. And you have no idea how much effect that has on people. When the lobbyists are saying they want something and none of the constituents have called to say that they don't, it's very easy to vote for something. It's a lot harder to vote for something when dozens of constituents have called in and asked them to please not vote for it, or talk to them about how it's going to affect their life. So it's not something that, the average normal person wants to do, is take a break out of their day and contact their legislator, but it's essential to do it. And if not, to plug into an organization that's doing it, because once a law is passed, it's generally too late.
You guys are a dynamic duo. I learned a lot.
Yes.
And I hope our viewing audience did the same. this was so impactful. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us, and thanks for also like having my good buddy on here too. I'm like always so happy when I see James. So,
I was so happy when I heard you were coming to us. Good to see you. So,
Yay! That's great.
Thank you, guys.
So,
And we're gonna say good night to our guest.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
good night, guys. She got it.
Wow,
Wow.
that was good.
I
I think I was a little enlightened. I was a lot enlightened because
I
as
was a lot enlightened.
I was too, I must admit, because as I was reading these bills and these new laws, and I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. This is already here. Why is this? And
my
of course,
God.
as a mom,
I want to do more of this.
I'm always trying to figure it out to inform my customers for their children, grandchildren, and of course my nieces, nephews, and my daughter. So parents, please inform, because these things come in so quietly. If you don't know that they've changed or upgraded these laws,
They come in really, I mean, July 1 and October 1 are two policy dump dates.
yes,
And they just quietly are on the books, and unless they impact you, you never know.
yeah, just wake up then, and there they are, and you get pulled over, and you say, "Hey, I didn't know that. When was this?"
Yeah, you get pulled over and they says, well, we can't see Sunshine State on your tag.
Right. And what's that said? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. And I first heard that in the 80s, but I'm sure that these people now really means it.
Yeah,
You're
I'm pretty
you're
sure
not
that
going to get any grace. So it is just better for us to look at your license plates, your tags, and if it's covering, just to be safe, just remove it.
and just really understand the gun laws, folks. That is being tested right now.
Yeah.
So it's just something that for Black folks, the law may be the law, but for you, it is likely going to be interpreted a little different than for other folks. So be mindful of
Mhm.
these changing laws. So October 1st was that date, you guys.
Yeah. And look, some of these things are I look at them as hidden traps or hidden blessings.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they are hidden, and we're gonna keep bringing them, the ones that we think affect our community the most. Maybe not as long, but we will bring these laws, because I think it was like 100 of them.
And
New
yeah, there was, but good catch for you to make this a priority for this month. I really appreciated both James and Michelle. They just gave it to us in ways that we could all understand.
Yes.
And there was a couple questions that I saw kind of after we finished talking about it that we did not get to address. We will get better at that. In terms of making sure that your questions are asked in a more timely manner. So, but we do appreciate the comments and the questions that we're getting. But it's the power is not in Tallahassee. Both James and Michelle pretty much said it's every person watching tonight. The power really is in our hands. Use your voice, use your vote, and use your platforms. That's what they said over and over again. Your
And the power is local.
Yeah.
It's local. It got to start with our city. Then Tallahassee. We got to start voting more.
I think that's what they did. They started local and they built right on into the federal. And right now, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the future, but the power doesn't necessarily stop for us at the ballot box. There are many, many, many things we can do. There are bills being passed all the time that we can impact if you get active. And get active doesn't mean that you have to be in Tallahassee, they said. It means you should join an organization that is going to go to Tallahassee on your behalf. So it starts in the neighborhoods. The school boards. Your advocacy is that important. Stay engaged, stay informed, and keep fighting for what's right.
So Jeanette, when do early voting start for special election? I think the
Ooh.
20 is it the 24th? I know
Uh,
official is next Tuesday, the 28th.
4th through 28th, I think.
24th. Today is what, the 22nd or 21st?
All right, today's the 22nd. I'm looking at a calendar right now. Today's 22nd.
Oh, so they're not going to do early voting that much.
Tuesday, the 28th, you said?
Yeah. When is the 28th?
It's on a Tuesday.
Okay. Is it Tuesday coming?
Yeah.
Okay. So when do early voting start? Maybe it's the 23rd. I'm not sure. I don't know, people, but let's all get out and vote. And if you have your mail-in at this point, if you're not sending them out tomorrow morning, I would suggest, what's tomorrow is Thursday. God, we play it too close. When I get my mail-ins, I send it out immediately, right? It comes in that night. I'm filling it out and I send it out the next day. So we got to get out and vote.
It's a special election, and it is the runoff of the special election for District 5 for the Tampa City Council. And most of you are saying, aren't even paying attention to it. So we're going to encourage the viewers, but anybody who sees this, if you know somebody that lives in District 5, get them and they're registered to vote. It doesn't hurt. I don't even vote in District 5, but I'm already talking to people to get out there and vote. There were only about 5,000 that voted in the actual election. In the runoff, I'm going to guess there will be less. And the key will be who's able to turn out the most voters.
I'm going to guess that's going to be more.
Okay, we're going to see who's... We're going to see who's right.
We'll have a dollar bet here. We'll have a dollar bet. I'm thinking it's going to be more. It's easy. And we can't be complaining. We see what's going on. I mean, and Jeannette, I can remember how long we did Project 2025. I mean, over a year.
Yeah. People
telling people about Project 25. And at that time, most people hadn't even heard of it. And when I would get off and they would call me, people would call, "You're crazy. That could never happen. You're crazy." I'm like, look, they don't give you the goddamn blueprint. They don't put it on.
Yeah, I would like
these people get elected.
Yeah,
it's happening.
I would like to do some type of status or update on Project 2025. You can talk about what we talked about a year and a half ago, what we started talking about, what the response has been, but pretty much where are they today? And I'm going to send you a video to watch that is so eye-opening in terms of the plan that they had from the beginning 20 years ago and what's happening now. It will blow your mind. But I want to thank you, family, for tuning in tonight. If you found the value tonight, we want you to like the video. We want you to share it. And I will be getting out some shorts so that you can kind of share. It's important that we understand the laws that are being passed by this very, very, very conservative legislative body in the state of Florida. So we also want you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to grow the Black independent family. And even if you don't change to become an independent, we still need you to join because we think we share values that we need to be talking about. So the Black Independent on Facebook, thank you for joining us, like us, and share. So stay informed, stay bold, and stay independent in your thinking, folks.
And
anything else?
Stay safe.
All right. So I am actually doing something different that's probably not really working out, but ciao, everybody.
Good night.